My project Sacred Recollections explores the practice of placekeeping through the migratory bits of heritage between Greece and Turkey in the face of displacement. Inviting a reflection on how we navigate the dynamic nature of cultural identity, heritage, and home in a world where who we are and where we belong are tried to be confined within borders, the project seeks to question what happens to those who exist in between. All heritage is storytelling. Its making is based on a value set that involves the selective use of the past for the needs and purposes of present societies. And it is through this selective construction process that heritage's political function unfolds. As a country that has been home to various cultures, Turkish people have long lived and identified with diversity and togetherness as an integral part of their national identity. However, in recent decades, as part of the Turkification nation-building efforts, the institution of heritage anchors Islamic nationalist narratives in Turkish identity, while state-led practices selectively embraces aspects of the country's history and heritage, they aim to disregard its inherent plurality. In the context of nation-building, the project interrogates the coexistence of Turkish and Greek communities. Central to this, I look into the 1923 population exchange between Greece and Turkey, an event aimed at establishing a unified religious and ethnic identity within both countries, resulting in the displacement of 2 million people. This is how one comes across and thinks of the exchange, as mere data and numbers. We are yet to understand the impact it has left on generations of migrants, on the towns we inhabit, on both sides of the Aegean. The project seeks to question, in the context of the erosion of a shared culture between Greeks and Turks, how can we, through designed objects and events, reconcile the complex and multiple narratives to nurture a placekeeping practice, fostering a more inclusive understanding of politics around nation-making and their everlasting impact. Greek settlements were spread across the country, with Istanbul serving as the main hub of Greek cultural and economic life. When looking into displaced communities and towns affected by the exchange, over the course of the year I discovered Serafim Rizos and the practice he has set up, the placekeeping practice. It was a collective effort in archiving and moving their town, Sinassos in the Cappadocia region of Turkey, to Nea Sinassos, the town they built in Greece. Making me question, how do we maintain our sense of identity across borders? And what is an architectural language and act through the translation and movement of things that brings the lost qualities of the past to close proximity with the present? Their practice became the foundation for the project. 100 years after him, I pick up their efforts and extend his legacy through a process of fabulation, translation, and transposing. I use fabulation and storytelling to collect from reimagined spaces of Sinassos and translate them into a family of migrating architectures. To do this, we scan our surroundings, map out gaps in the story, and translate these elements into lightweight, portable, multi-sensory remembered objects that have the ability to travel and tell. Although we have missing pieces, while places change and communities disperse, the project explores architecture's role in placekeeping, showing that identities and their stories can be reimagined, preserved, and celebrated in new forms. These proposed architectures, like the displaced communities, exist in a state of being neither here nor there. As the first stop in their journey, we go to Sinassos in 1920, where we hear excerpts from a letter from Serafim.
Σήμερα ακούσαμε τα νέα ότι πρέπει να φύγουμε από τη γενέτειά.
Today we heard the news that we need to leave our hometown Sinassos in a few months. This is my first letter, here in my dear house. I decided to write these letters not for myself with an intention of nostalgia. I did learn that home is not bound to territories. It knows no border. I keep these for my children, who will not remember this very house. To all our children, and the generations to come, who maybe will not have any idea of Sinassos, of us, and how much we adored this land we got to share amongst all that we share. Perhaps the people of what will be from neighbours by the door to neighbours by borders. They will remember one another with anger, with hatred. My town, which I very much enjoyed to watch from my balcony. I see every moment etched into the homeland landscapes. I think of my students. I teach at the town's primary school. Most speak Karameledica, a dialect of Turkish written in Greek letters. I often hear the music from the town hammam, the streets flooded with Sinosocial women celebrating in their red embroidered dresses. The first thing my wife has packed is her beloved dress. Our church, carved inside the rocks, uniquely Cappadocian. It held some of my family's dearest moments. My Turkish friends always paid a visit to celebrate our festivities, just as we did theirs. In all these cherished moments, I remember my neighbours alongside us. While we spent lifetimes of shared homes, land, tables, what I now even more clearly see as my identity, my home. As of today, it was decided that I am the minority in my own home. In a few days, we leave for Istanbul for the last time, and from there to Athens, until we find a place to build our new town, which I already dreamt of, Naya Sinassos. They care a lot about what borders we are within, and so we will be across the Aegean, across the border, but Sinassos remains wherever its people go.
Narrated by Seraphim, we revisit the fabulated spaces and moments of Sinassos that I collect from. In the context of dying heritage of coexistence of Greek and Turkish communities, the objects travel to their first stop, Istanbul, and land in charged sites that now belong neither here nor there. The proposals create spaces of storytelling and media, with the aim of tracing down and unearthing the narratives of the displaced people and their heritage, all of which exist between Turkey and Greece.
Γράφω αυτό το γράμμα λίγες μέρες πριν από την αναχώρησή μας.
I am writing this letter days before our departure from Istanbul, a city that has always been the in-between for us. From an early age on, the men of my town would seasonally migrate here to earn a living. I walk on its streets filled with traces of this lifetime spent in a constant state of migration. The home by the Bosphorus I spent my days in. The church I would go to as it reminded me of my local church, where I prayed for the well-being of my family when I knew they prayed for mine, as they awaited my letters every week. The bustling market with our shops, as the crowd stepped away, became a joyous stage where we enjoyed the company of our neighbours. I now carry the soil of Sinassos to build Naya Sinassos. The clock of my school, photographs of my house, the plans of our town, quite literally taking Sinassos with us. But I know I cannot make a literal copy or anchor it to one place. It has become a town that is in transit, in translation. So is Istanbul. So are both sides of the Aegean, where countless narratives lie buried. As we bid farewell to our homeland, I carry with me not just the artifacts of my town, but also the weight of these untold stories. My only wish is for these to be known, remembered, and told further.
In Istanbul, as introduced by Seraphim, these objects inhabit sites that echo the journey of displaced communities, like fragments of Seraphim's town following him, to the neighborhoods he lived and worked in. They generate dialogue and reflection on cultural intersections, aim to reveal histories of the city we are otherwise unable to read in their current state, and sometimes bringing their lost qualities in renewed forms and actuation to their currently abandoned state, like the church and the market. By translating stone buildings of Sinassos into soft, malleable forms like pillows or soap casts, we acknowledge their displacement, as they traverse contexts they used to belong to, but now no longer do. Through the act of transposing into new contexts, architecture becomes a device for storytelling, in Sinassos, Istanbul, Naya Sinassos, and beyond, a process that highlights the adaptability of identities and suggests new forms of celebrating them as they transcend borders. The final stop in the journey of these objects is Naya Sinassos, where they reunite with the grandchildren of the founders of the placekeeping practice. Sinassos and Naya Sinassos are almost the same place, but now in different countries. Their name is the only hint we have that they once had any connection. The architectures I create, while carrying the tangible essence of Sinassos in translated form, are deeply rooted in the intangible heritage that has been lost in their origin. Migrants have used cultural practices to stay connected with their homeland, and thus, these migrating objects become stages for these intangible practices,
stages of storytelling and media. Synassos is just one of many towns in Turkey and Greece that continues to be forced to choose an identity. As the placekeeping architectures keep on traversing contexts, we can ensure that the stories and memories of Synassos, as well as many other towns, endure for generations to come.